Welcome back to Backstage Pass podcast. That's right, a podcast right here at Temple University, brought to you by the CPCA Advising Office. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I am super duper excited for today's guest. He is actually a professor of mine that I've had for a couple of classes, and he is just such an interesting man, so I am super glad to have him. Today's guest is a 6-time Emmy-winning composer, music producer, audio director, educator, and a renowned guitarist who just so happens to teach here at Temple. He is a professor for classes such as scoring for film and digital media, scoring and audio design for video games, and audio editing. He studied at Berklee College of Music and has produced soundtracks for Walt Disney, Netflix, Canal Plus, ABC, Ubisoft, so many more to list. We are super excited to have him on. Patrick D. Caumette, how are you doing today?
Well, thank you for having me, Ben. I don't know if I'll live up to your introduction, but I'm fine today, and I'm happy to be with you for sure.
Oh, well, I am super excited to interview you, sir. As always, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Sarah. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just swell, Ben. How are you?
You know, hanging in there, getting through the week, pushing towards the weekend as always. So anyway, I'm just going to say professor because that's how I know you as. I always just call you professor in the classes, so I'll just continue to do that here. How long have you been teaching at Temple now?
Well, I started teaching at Temple in 2005 when I arrived in Philly. I was in New Jersey before this, as you can tell by my accent. And then I started teaching at Temple for 7 years. But it was not at Boyer. I was teaching a class at the Film and Media School. It was film sound, it was called. It was a film sound class.
Okay, so how long at Boyer then?
Boyer, it's been only a year. That's my second semester at Boyer. I was delighted when Steve Kreinberg contacted me, was actually referred to him by Leanne Erickson, who recommended me, and he offered me to teach the scoring for film class that you didn't take that one. You took the following semester, you took the scoring and audio design for video game.
Right, that's right.
So 1 year this time around, and 7 years from 2005 to, plus 7, that would be 2012.
Okay, got it. Nice. So with being at Temple for so long, was the transition a little odd when you came to Boyer since you were primarily in the film school?
Well, not really, because, as you know, I'm really a musician first and foremost. So teaching the film sound was a natural for me because I've been doing media work, scoring media work forever. But no, I feel right at home, and it has a lot to do with the people that, got me on board and the whole faculty that is, that is so friendly and welcoming, and then, of course, COVID happened. So we kind of all became fairly isolated. So, I cannot say that I've been in a lot of meetings with the faculty and Boyer lately, but I know it will happen as soon as this thing is past us.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So have you been inside of Presser? Have you been able to teach any in-person classes since this whole thing has happened?
Believe it or not, Ben, because you never had me, face to face. But yes, the first semester I did half a semester face to face, and then the second half we started doing Zoom instead. So yeah, I've had both experiences.
So I guess this is more of a personal question coming from me. When doing classes like scoring for film and digital media or scoring and audio design for video games, from my experiences of it being online, it's been very helpful. I mean, I'm going to be real. When I first entered the class for video games, I didn't know how that was going to work out, because anything to do with recording and doing it through Zoom, it's there's that weird non-hands-on except for the gear that you have, but it worked out really well. So I'm curious, for the half a semester you did in person, were you able to take advantage of the recording studio that is on the 3rd floor?
No, we didn't, because both classes are not about recording, they're about post-production. So it's always after the recording stage. So no, there was no use of the recording studio, which would have been nice. I mean, certainly a piece of the course, a very small piece, I do mention that when you write a score, whether it's for film or TV or video games, that you always, as a composer and producer, you benefit from including live instruments in your recordings. So that would be the time where we could have done one in the studios, but that didn't happen this one time around. Maybe in the future.
Yeah, that would be super awesome.
Yeah.
Out of the classes that you've taught so far, what's been your favorite one?
Well, it's hard to say because it's quite different in a way, and at the same time, it's similar. I mean, you're scoring. So whether you're scoring for film or video game, and we know these days that video game music has evolved and is so much better technically than it used to be. So, and it's very similar to a film score, not in the inner workings of it, but in terms of purely production value. We're capable of having an orchestra recording your music the same way we have in film. So, I love it all. And I'm also, I play video games. Well, like I mentioned to your class, I stopped playing at one point because I wanted to focus on music. It was becoming too distracting. But because I'm teaching this class now, I had an excuse to get back to it. And so I love film. I love watching film. I love watching, TV series and video games. So to me, it's all good. There's no really preference. And if you were to ask me with performing, also since I'm a guitar player, it's such a different thing too that you don't compare theater and film. As an actress, Sarah, it's the same for you. I mean, it's such a different experience being on stage in theater and then being filming, which is, a really entirely different concept. So I love it all.
I feel you with that one. Do you have any favorite video games or movies or shows based on the soundtracks alone?
Not the soundtracks alone, because really, honestly, if the game is no good, even if the soundtrack is good, I'm not going to follow through. I'm going to quit. So my first thing is the game has to really be engaging me. And then if the soundtrack is great, that's wonderful. But very often I turn the soundtrack off because I do music all day. And when I take a break, the last thing I want is have more music. So I leave the sound design on, because that's definitely very important to me. But sometimes, especially when it's looped over and over, I get tired of it. So I usually turn that stuff off.
Honestly, that's super fair. I can understand where that gets, especially if you're stuck on a level and you just hear the same music going on in the background the entire time and it never ends. That gets so annoying.
It does. And we're musicians, so we really pay attention to this. It's not like we can turn it off or, put it in the background of our minds. It's I'm too sensitive to music. So, but I listened to it once, and then once I heard the loop once, I'm like, okay, turn off.
I was going to say, one game that I've found myself like that was the board game Monopoly. Obviously, they did a video game version of it, and I have a PlayStation, so I was like, you know what, why not? I'll play with a couple of friends that are from a couple of different states, and we'll all play a game of Monopoly. They don't have any other music except this one thing that just loops for the entire game, and if you've played Monopoly, those games take hours.
Forever,
So sitting there and hearing it, it's just, I turned it off completely. It's unbelievable. The only thing I left on was Mr. Monopoly Man talking to me in my ears whenever I'd have headphones on. And
that you're going to jail. You're going to jail, buddy.
Yeah, I need to make sure he can tell me that before I go. So with being, a professor at Temple University for such a long time, obviously you've had a lot of experience in Philadelphia. And obviously, if it is a nice little lunch break that you have, maybe you want to go find food. Is there any place in Philly or even Temple specifically where you're able to go find food?
No, my friend, wrong question for me because, it's been, for you, it sounds like it's been a long time. I was teaching that one class, which was film sound, but it was taking place late in the day, maybe at 5 or 6. It was like a 4-hour class. So I would always bring something with me. I never cared to go, get some food. And the class that I was teaching, well, half a semester, I forgot what time in the day it was, but I remember it was after lunch. So I was taken care of. No food recommendations for me. And anyway, being French, you can imagine I'm a very picky eater, and I would turn down most places. So I'm not the right guy to ask this question to.
That's fair, but like if you're bringing food, what kind of food do you bring?
Man, this is turning into a cuisine little thing here. I would do like wraps, maybe. I'd do a wrap, stuff like this, something that you don't need to warm up, But now I'm gluten, I was fine until, a few years back, and now I'm gluten intolerant, probably because of the glyphosate that is in everything we eat in America. So it messed up my system. And now, I don't know about wraps. It would have to be something that doesn't have any wheat in it.
Yeah, that's fair. See, I'm so interested about food because whenever I meet a great composer, I always think it's something with the food or water that makes them so great. So I just gotta know.
That would be too easy. But I'm totally happy to talk about food with you. But I cannot tell you about my habits locally around the campus.
Totally fair. I totally get that. Do you have a favorite spot in Philadelphia where you like to go to?
Well, there were a few places. My wife and I, again, we lived in France, in Paris, for many years. My parents have a culture of food because they had not just my parents, my father, my mother had restaurants. My grandfather also had restaurants. My wife had a restaurant or two at one point or another. So we're pretty big on food. So we tried a few places. I don't want necessarily. What was this thing that was entirely vegan, but it was amazing, and they were, preparing it in a very sophisticated way, and the food was great. I forgot the name right now. It's been too many years, but that was awesome. I love also Thai. I love sushi when it's good sushi, but these days either you're going to eat plastic or radiated fish. So I'm not sure. Unfortunately, you're of a generation that, and you and our children, they're never going to know what we experience in terms of food and fish, for example. It's a very sad story. So. And I'm turning more and more into being vegan. So being in France, I used to eat meat twice or lunch and dinner every day. That was part of the French culture when I was a kid. But things are changing, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, because industrial production and animals, there's something really wrong with this. And I think animals should have the same rights we have as human beings. They have feelings, they have emotions, and we treat them the way we treated other human beings. And it's not even only a thing of the past; it still goes on in the world. So we have to stop, being abusive and exploiting each other for profit.
For sure, yeah.
I don't know if we're allowed to talk about politics here. You don't want to
totally are, yeah.
You don't want to open that can of worm with me, man. They're going to ban me if you do that.
Oh, trust me. We've already recorded an episode with a guest where, we usually do like 30 to 45 minutes, and we had like a 2-hour long episode, and we just went down a rabbit hole of different topics, whether they were political or just things that we thought should be different. And we definitely go down the rabbit hole sometimes. I will say that. So, is
this how you plan to pay for your education? Blackmailing teachers because they say too much?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Oh man. No. Oh man. Yeah, no, it's fun. We definitely have guests come on and we talk about a lot of different things. And we never know where the conversation is going to take us. So we are open to anything, and honestly anything where, we might think it goes too far. We obviously know, and we'll make sure to make little cuts here and there. So,
okay, that's
but
good.
For the most part, we try to leave as much in as possible because the conversations flow, and we like, we don't ever like to have a rough stop in any of the conversations going on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, to switch gears back to actually Presser Hall real quick. Which I know, super weird transition. So the Presser Hall recording studio, I've been there a couple times where, doing classes like sound recording and sound editing, where we go in and do some test recordings and then we use those files to, edit them and mix them how we've learned. But the Presser recording studio is built kind of strangely, where they just kind of took some practice rooms and made them into a recording studio basically.
Mm-hmm.
If there was anything you could change about it, what would it be?
Well, again, you know what? I was teaching at a different school for 7 years, and I started teaching this class in January, which didn't involve the recording studio. So I never, set foot in the studio, except I hear that it's very small for classes. Only a few people can be in at the same time. So I'm not going to, make any comments because I've never seen it. I don't know the gear that is in there. Of course, I would think that it would be nice if we would be able to accommodate a full class, like 15 to 20 people. That would be nice. What I know is that I'm teaching in the lab, and the only criticism, I think the size of the lab is fine. But I think that for teaching an audio class, having the air conditioning unit, which probably is also the heating unit, in the same room is kind of a problem because of the noise that it makes. And students that are in the back of the room are next to the unit, and I'm sure they don't really hear well. But if we're really talking about being very picky and demanding, for us audio people, when we listen, we would like to only be able to hear the music or the sound itself and no additional sources that are disrupting frequencies and whatnot. So, but I don't have much of a comment to make here.
It's funny that you bring up the lab at Presser Hall, because they have a lab at Rock Hall as well that are...
Oh, that's the one I'm talking about.
Oh,
it's
you
the
are
Rock
talking
Hall.
about Rock Hall.
Yeah.
It's funny. Talking about the air conditioning, yeah, it does get kind of loud, but the other thing that gets loud is because Rock Hall is right off Broad Street and the basement's underground. The subway, you can distinctly hear it when it comes through when you're in that room, especially if you're trying to, work on a mix or something like that, or even just teach a class. It could be very, very distracting. So,
we had that time in that space where I was showing an excerpt of a movie, a student film, and took the music off to show people what a movie sounds like when you remove the music, because most people are used to hear soundtracks, which really help. And at one point in the film, there was this global warming scene where probably the ice from the polar location there, and a sheet of ice was falling into the sea. And right there, the subway passed by just at the right moment, where these sub-frequencies from the subway, just when the ice was falling over. Perfect timing for sound design. I mean, in one of the rare occasions where it worked out really well.
I mean, hey, that's got to be some sort of blessing in disguise. Very neat, very neat. So I actually kind of want to move on to talk about your Emmy wins, which is super cool. I don't think I've had the privilege to actually meet anyone who's won any, very notable awards. And I guess the thing I'm most curious about is not even the how was the feeling of it, or how great was it, but how did you find out? Because I feel like it's so you can either find out via email or you just hear it through the grapevine or something like that.
Well, you have to enter. And submit the project for which you are eligible for an Emmy, and then see if you get nominated. And so the first step is getting nominated. So I've been lucky, as you know, maybe. I think I've told the class a few times over this past year that, I've been involved in this historic a documentary series, so history documentary series that has been going on for 10 years, that has been airing on 6 ABC, so called Philadelphia: The Great Experiment. And because we did 13 episodes and we were doing 1 or 2 a year, every year, I could submit that project, and it's a regional Emmys. It's not the national ones. In order to do national, the film that you have music in has to be distributed nationally. This one is a region, so we have at least 4 states that can watch it. And so I entered. And for the first year, of course, it's always the first time that is the most memorable. And there's a little evening where you go to find out if you are nominated. And that event is not tuxedo, and you don't have to really be well dressed. You can go in, with your t-shirt and blue jeans. It's in the summer, so it's hot. And lo and behold, I got nominated. So that was like, wow, amazing. And then if you're nominated, then there's a ceremony taking place where you do have to dress up, and there's a whole bunch of people, everybody, big dresses and tuxedos. And so I had to get.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Are you there?
Hey everyone, welcome back. Sorry about that interruption. We are back, ready than ever. We're going to finish this interview out strong, and I cannot wait to ask some of these other questions, because some of the questions I have coming up are actually some ones I'm genuinely curious about. So, I think we left off of how you found out about winning an Emmy.
We left it at the Emmy. Hang on, I'm just going to raise the level a little bit here.
For sure.
So yeah, the process I think we discussed already. So you get nominated first, and which is already a fun opportunity to network and meet other people. And well, to me, Emmys is like anything else. It's nice to have the accolades, but in reality, it's a great thing for networking, but to me, it's not the essential thing about music. And the essential thing is improving on what you know and keep growing. And so Emmys are a great little way to say, okay, keep going,
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So are there any connections that you've made through the Emmys that you've worked with that actual person?
Yeah. What is it? WHYY.
Okay.
People like this. So meeting people over there, but because you never want to turn off the networking possible. Meeting people and networking is important. So, but yeah, it is what it is. I put it this way: these are regional Emmys, which are like a large swath of the local state or the adjacent states, but it's not a national one, because if it was, everybody would have seen the series. It's something that is, you've got to have a national distribution, and because we have ABC being the distributor, it's still Walt Disney, but it's regional. So maybe I would be jumping up and down a little more if it was a national one.
Right, exactly. For sure. So I think everyone has a favorite music genre that they listen to. But since you're a composer, I'm curious, is there a specific genre of film or video games that you specifically like to compose, or that you have most fun with?
You asked me like 2 questions at once there. So, yeah, something that you really like. I think being a media composer, you really need to be open to anything, basically, and try to learn as much as possible across the board, genre-wise, and what also it represents in terms of techniques and orchestration and rhythm and harmonies and production. There's also the production point, because somebody turns to you and says, I'd like you to score something in that direction. Production is equally as important as the rest to identify what makes it what it is, that being said, your question was about, sorry, I lost myself already.
It was, what is your favorite that you
genre to score? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm mostly interested in not doing the same thing twice, or even though we have a tendency, because we have our own styles, you and I, everybody, every composer, every producer,
right,
a musician, we have our own style. But so even when you make an effort to get out of it, you're still a little bit in your own garden. But I do like challenges too. So it's difficult. I wouldn't be able to tell you, yes, there's one specific thing that I like to do most. I love a lot of different things. That's, in a nutshell, I think it's me. And it may not be the case for somebody else, some people like the Rolling Stones and some others, whatever, Kanye West. In my case, I like a lot of different stuff. And I'm interested in learning more. And I discover people that influence me for a while, and sometimes for a lifetime. But film composers, one of my favorites that I've been listening to, I was listening to a lot for a certain period, and now I have to say I don't listen to him anymore. Alberto Iglesias. So he's not as known as Zimmer and Newman and all these other people, but he's Spanish, and he's the composer that has been working with Almodovar, all the Almodovar movies. It's him, but he's very, he's great. I love that European sensibility. His orchestrations are great. There's something very cinematic and dramatic and dark, and in minor keys very often, but also gestures he does with the orchestra, and like triplets, spiccato lines. Things like this that I really enjoyed, and he has a little bit of a jazz approach. One film I recommend is Taylor Spy. What is it? Trenker Taylor Spy. It's a spy movie, but it has this name that is like, there's definitely Spy and Taylor in it. You do a search, you find the movie.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. And his score is the one that's in it?
Yeah, he scored that, and many other films. He's had a chance to do Hollywood scoring, but that didn't work out as well. I think he's more of a European sensibility. So the big Hollywood score, whatever it is, but I would recommend him. Now, as far as jobs, man, you just bring me a job that is interesting, where I don't compromise myself too much, if possible, because, media composer is about having clients, and so what kind of work do you want? Are you willing to take, and what is maybe not something that you really want to do, on a regular basis? So, interesting world.
For sure. I totally agree with that. Yeah, I guess the only reason I wanted to ask is because I find myself, no matter what I do, and you even brought it up, I find myself going back to what I'm comfortable with. And I always have to kind of shift myself out of it for no matter what I'm doing, whether it's for like one of your class assignments, or if it's just for something that I'm writing with friends, or if another friend is like, hey, I'm like in this, I don't know, indie folk band, and we're looking for a guitar player to write music. Like, could you do it? It's not something I'm very well versed in, but I always like to try, and I always find myself stepping back into comfort zone, and I'm like, wait, I can't do that, I got to go back to here.
That's right It's like practicing. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an important quality to have as an artist, because if you take just an instrumentist, let's say you play an instrument, and in your practice regimen, you just repeat the same exercise every day. And that can be good for warm-ups sometimes. But even in a warm-up, eventually you want to try to, challenge yourself, or else repetition doesn't necessarily bring growth. So growth is through exploration. Therefore, you've got to challenge yourself. Nobody's going to give you a kick in the butt if you're not doing it yourself, to yourself.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And it's
But
funny
you have to say, my classes are not like this, right? I just give you gentle kicks in the butt to get you challenged and try new things, and that's the purpose, right?
Oh, of course. And you know what? The experience from your classes have actually helped me improve different skills of, oh, wait, if this is like what I can do, like if this is a way to do it, let me try it and put a little spin on it and how I do it. And then from there, I find different ways to, figure out what is good for maybe like a comedy or like an action if I'm doing something with film, or if I'm just doing something with music in general, to find aspects of, using different instruments, knowing what kind of vibes and feelings they're giving off in movies, trying to put them in my own music to get that same vibe.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think even popular genres have evolved because of film music becoming more and more popular. But, let's face it, film music was also an avenue for professional composers to have work and steady income. And if you hit the jackpot, if you're lucky enough to be in the top 10 or top 20 composers, you generate also great revenue. So it attracted, some of the best people around, like John Williams, would have chosen maybe something else than film music if there was a way to make a living doing something he wanted to write. But and now it's shifting a little bit with video games too, because there is careers to be made and steady work and income, and so the big dogs are there competing, and so the quality is really good. And now I think if you look at the history of even popular music, pop music has evolved dramatically all the time, right? It never stayed one thing. It was swing at one point, then rock and roll, and then and then one day rock died. I was told it was going to die. I said no way, but eventually you can see it because it's something else. And of course, rock is not dead. The way classical is not dead, jazz is not dead, but there's new movements, and usually these movements happen because you integrate other things. So it was like rock, and then it was jazz rock and country rock and folk rock and Latin rock, whatever. You integrate other cultures. And so film is one of them. And so I can totally see why there would be a lot to benefit from incorporating movie soundtrack colors in popular music as well, because it's one of the elements.
For sure. Exactly. And you actually just brought up a point that I'm actually curious to know your input on. You were saying how music evolves into, other things when you start blending different genres or just different influences. With how you've seen music progress in your lifetime, at least, where do you predict it's going to go?
Well, aging is not necessarily great. It happens to all of us. There's one compensation is you get a chance to see, things unfold time-wise, and then you can see patterns too. So the pattern you see is like, electronic music, like I told you maybe in class, because I repeat myself too, but it was in the 70s, we call it German rock. It was electronic music, very similar to what we have today. Of course, technology has evolved, and so you're capable of doing great things now. But there's still a foundation that is there. So I would say what's coming next is what has already existed, and that's also a business approach of things. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You play it safe, and corporations don't want to bet on breaking down the system entirely. So we see currents coming back. So you just are like on the 30-year loop, and maybe it accelerates over time. But the 80s were cool not so long ago. And I missed the boat because man, the 80s was my time, and I could have made $1 million. I didn't make it because now it's too late. It's going to be the 90s. It's like oops. So I don't know. And also the unforeseen I think it has more to do with talents, with people, and those are the ones that change the paradigm. They change, they reshift things where, there was a Miles Davis, there was a Stravinsky, there were the Mozarts and people like that, or Bob Marley. There are people that are not totally in the loop there that can come out of left field and completely put everything in question and open up a great new place. But even that is still a heritage. It doesn't come without a heritage. We can't avoid that. We were fed, milked a certain thing, and it's part of our DNA.
Exactly. For sure. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, because there's definitely a trend going on where, whether it is involved with scores or music in general, there is a trend of going backwards. Mm-hmm. And I definitely think you see that a lot more now, more than ever, which is super interesting at the same time,
It is.
It's just, maybe it's not reinventing the wheel like you said, but you know what? It's still fresh to certain
creative.
ears,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the torch is being passed to you people, so you have the torch now. It's your turn to, eventually create wonderful things.
Whew.
Yeah. Yeah,
we'll see.
Somebody got to do it, or else we're just going to be watching Kim Kardashian and whatever for the rest of our lives, and we'll have a collective collapse of society due to poor standards.
Yeah, exactly.
And AI dominance.
For sure.
If you don't watch, if you don't keep, your eyes open, you don't want the machines to overtake the whole thing.
Yeah, we gotta leave space for the humans still. The human race is still very much alive, and we still need to thrive. So I researched and found out, obviously, that you worked for Walt Disney France. Is that true?
Yeah, well, that was actually connected to my first big gig. I had one. I got lucky around 27 years old after college. I left Boston and I moved to Paris, and it was the first time I was in Paris. And fresh out of college, you want to find work, and that's what I'm always saying in my classes, as you know, is that you'd better diversify, because that's really the one way as an artist to have a chance to survive change, and change will come no matter what. So one of the things was, even though I had pursued a performing career, at Berkeley, my major was kind of performing, and it was harmony and arranging and guitar and performing and creating my original music that was kind of a progressive fusion at the time, which became progressive world fusion because of the influences that I got myself into in Paris, because we have a huge West African scene there, with like the best guys in the world, Richard Bona, Paco Seri, Etienne Bappé. Those are people I was playing with. But at the same time, because I was already recording and producing stuff, I wanted to continue doing that and pursuing opportunities to work in that field. But that one thing with Walt Disney was pure luck. He's the backup singer of my band, one band I was in, which was more like covers in clubs. I had a boyfriend who had created this cartoon character, and she said, "Would you be interested in scoring that? Do a demo?" And I said, I would love to. So I got to meet her friend, and we hit it off. And that cartoon series, worked out. Out of the pilot, we got, which may not seem like a lot of money these days. $2 million is not much, but back in the early 90s, mid 90s, you could produce 200 episodes of 30 seconds each of this cartoon. Well, it turns out that the directors, that was not my friend. My friend had invented the character, the little bird, Le Piaf.
Right.
But he had hired these guys as directors, these twin brothers, the Brizzi brothers, who were brilliant artists in their own right, but classical animation, not Pixar, computer-based, really by hand.
Right.
And they got hired by Walt Disney because they had done a few cartoons in France that were big cartoons. You're probably not going to connect with the characters, but one was Asterix. Asterix is this Gaul, the little guy from Gaul with the big guy from Gaul at the time of the Roman Empire fighting Rome.
Okay.
And anyway, they did these very big cartoons, and so they were given the position of directors of the Walt Disney Animation Studio in Paris. So at the time, Walt Disney had 5 studios, I believe, one in Spain, one in France, maybe one in England, that I'm not sure, and 2 in the States. And so they were the head of the studio. And because we had done this 200-episode cartoon series at 27, they offered me to do some pilots, some demos for other stuff. And that's how they were Walt Disney, and I became the guy for Walt Disney for a brief period of time. So that's how it went. I scored their big Euro Disney. It's like Disney World and Disneyland.
Yeah.
It's a attraction park. And so they had the European campaign to advertise for the opening of that park. So I did the score for that and other projects with these guys. They were great.
So, wow. So that's something that intrigues me. You said you got that connection from a person that was in your band.
Right.
And they knew a person.
Right. Her boyfriend. Yeah.
Right. That's incredible, because that's such a surreal kind of thing for me, at least, as a 21-year-old who has played in a lot of bands, just finding small connections here and there. It's incredible to hear a story where you can find as big of a connection as that, where it leads into something even bigger,
Yeah, well, being in a band, I'm sorry, but that's actually, there's 3 ways to climb the ladder, and get work in this industry. You start as an assistant, the second way would be if you're in a band and you're touring and you're kind of in a band, because there's this social networking thing, people going to clubs to check out bands. There's other artists, there's producers, there's people from the industry. And so that's, it's a really legit way. I wouldn't say it's, to be discarded at all.
Oh, not at all, for sure. I mean, I can account a couple of different smaller side gigs that I got from being in a band.
Right.
I do a lot of live sound for me personally, and
engineering. That's why your mixes are good.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can mix a band live, then mixing in the studios, it should be not a piece of cake, but it should be.
It definitely helps. I mean, and I got one sound gig at this venue because my band ended up playing a show, but the sound engineer for the night dipped last minute. And the venue owner was freaking out because they didn't, they didn't have anyone on board. And so I just kind of popped in. I was like, I'm playing tonight, but I can mix the other bands. And she was like, cool, we'll pay you $100. Go ahead, do it. And
you made more as an engineer than as a band member, bro.
I did that night. I really did. And after the show, she was like, you did a really great job. Would you want a job here? And I was like, sure. And, the room size is totally not ideal for mixing. It is just a narrow hallway kind of deal. So the reflections were crazy off the side of the walls. But I had a buddy who had worked there for many years, and he now worked at a lot of larger venues when, everything was open. And he was like, man, if you can mix that hallway, you can mix any venue in Philadelphia. Seriously. So that's like one of the bigger connections I've gotten through playing in a band. And even so, it's, led me to even more opportunities. And it was cool. It's cool how once you find one or two, connections, those connections can branch off to maybe 4 or 5 more. And
exactly.
Then lead to 10 or 12 more.
Absolutely. It's branching.
Exactly.
Branching.
So I whenever you do harp on the fact of networking is your best friend, you're not wrong. I always love how you preach that in your classes because it's true. It's very true.
Let me put it this way. It should be your priority if you intend to make a living of music. Some people make other choices and they say, I'm not going to compromise myself. I want to only do my thing, and my thing is writing avant-garde chamber music,
right.
And that's not to say there's no work to be had doing that as well. But if making money is not a priority, maybe then networking is not so much of a priority. But I would even tend to disagree, because if you want your chamber music to be performed, you need to network as well,
Yeah, exactly. It means everything, especially in the music business. It means everything if you want to make some sort of living. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I look up to you and how you've made your living. Believe me, it's
to be honest, it's never easy. It
Right.
is, because we are constantly unemployed. We have a job. So how long is the job lasting? If you're a composer, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and you're out of a job on a very regular basis. So if you've done it for years, you got laid off hundreds of times.
Exactly.
And you have to reinvent what is the next job for you. So, we have to accept that as well. When we do it, we have to realize that it requires of you this constant search, and the networking is a kind of nice way to do it, as long as you don't get, in the habit and being at a bar every night and like indulging too much every night, because then, you may become addicted to, whatever. You have to watch for that in the networking piece. But other than that, it's a necessity. Otherwise, you're just going to eventually give up pursuing it as like your main income. And that's okay too. To be honest, it's okay too. One period of time, I didn't have a job, and a lot of things fell apart in my life with my wife. There, the business flooding business got destroyed. A lot of things, and I picked up a regular job for a few years. But guess what? On weekends, I was the happiest of people, because then I was rewriting what I wanted to write without needing a client. Clients' desires and clients' guidelines, and being a little bit challenged in that respect. Writing just for the sake of writing what you want to do is also phenomenal. So, it's all good.
It's all good. Exactly. I do have a couple more questions. One being, with such an extensive career that you've had with scoring and composing, what made you decide to start teaching?
That's a good question. And another thing that we didn't mention, but it was equally big for me, was performing, because I've always been performing and writing and producing. That, it's these two things until at a certain point, carpal tunnel kind of made me have to stop performing as my main goal. But now, in terms of what was the question again?
It was with such an extensive career that you've had, and obviously with performing as well. What made you decide to go down
to teach? Sorry.
Right.
Yeah, well, teaching is interesting, and I think teaching is for every one of us that teach. It's all personal and different. There's not one way to be a teacher. There's not, just one school of thought. But at one point, when I tried to restart my career, because when I took this break doing a regular job, 9 to 5, I badly wanted to get back in music. And one way to do it was to move out of New Jersey, move to Philadelphia, and to stop my 9 to 5 and start making a living with music again. And actually, I was teaching guitar when I was younger, at 30 years old. I'm sure you've taught some lessons. We all, as performers, share what we know, and there's always somebody that needs a little bit of guidance that is not as advanced as we are. So teaching privately is something that I used to do. But then when we moved to Philly, that was one way to try to reinsert myself quicker also, and by talking about something I really love. Interestingly, though, I have to say I'm now older, because I'm talking about 15 years ago. And now teaching has changed in the way I look at it, maybe because of aging. I feel that I don't feel in competition at all with anybody that I teach. You are going to be on the market, and you may be, going for scoring gigs. But to me, that's irrelevant, and I really want to dedicate at this point in time, because I have enough life behind me of experience of 40 plus years of doing this thing obsessively, and obsessively is also can be an attribute, or maybe not. Sometimes it keeps you from looking up and seeing the sky and stuff, but
right.
but at this point, I really want to pass on as much information as I can, and I will share with you. And the beautiful thing too is that you also, in return, turning me on to things, things that you listen to and your approach. I think teaching, there's a very important aspect, which is the conversation. I don't enjoy teaching anymore, which I used to do a little bit more in a lecture style where there's no feedback. And I think the exchange makes the experience way more beneficial for everybody involved. It's more fun for me. It's more fun for you because we have a dialogue. And so at this point in my life, teaching is something that I very much look forward to. But of course, like an artist, I'm demanding of myself and I want to do it well. So if I have a little stumble at one point, I feel just as bad as if I wrote a piece of music and the ending is not the way I wanted it to be. So you're never done learning. And that's why we have this exchange, because it's people that are searching. All of us, we're searching and aiming to enrich ourselves. And so it's a really lovable experience I find at this point. And I'm fortunate also to be in the right environment because, different houses and people maintain the houses differently. And so far, Temple has been a good one.
That's awesome.
See,
That's
and
really
I'm doing this because I'm about to ask for a raise. No, I'm kidding.
Give him the raise. Give him the raise. He deserves it. Perfect. I honestly couldn't have asked for a better answer too. Like I genuinely didn't know what the answer was going to be because it's just something where I'm like, how does one, decide like this is what I want to do? And that just, gives it all the more of a wow. So there are just more paths musicians can take that
Absolutely.
they don't know about.
Oh, and that should be one of them. Frankly, again, we're talking about diversifying. Teaching for any of us, especially if you went to college, you have a foundation. You have, like I say, a garden, or you have, this thing that have been transmitted to you, that you've absorbed, that you've digested, that you have assimilated. And in order for this thing to keep growing, teaching is a great way to do it. It's probably the best way. So even on a selfish standpoint, teaching strengthens you, gets you to think more about the issues, structure your thoughts, research. You're not going to present something you haven't researched. So, and at the same time, it's a stream of income. It's a stream of income. So there you have it, a few eggs in that basket, not in one basket, in several baskets, one egg in each basket,
For sure.
And so, wow, I didn't know rock was going to die. There was a time period where I was hired to walk into a studio to do a guitar solo, and they pay well. I would just come to do a guitar solo. I was young, but $200, $300. It's kind of fun. But then one day it died. Nobody was interested ever in hearing another guitar solo. It's like when Kenny G was around, and eventually people didn't want to hear a soprano sax and haven't really wanted ever since. So guitar solo is like, get out of here. What do you do? I have this other thing, and I can engineer, I can write music, produce, I can teach, and I can perform, still be on stage. But so teaching is a great one. Yes, absolutely.
For sure. So I have one more question, and this is just as...
is it the funny question thing?
No, we're going to get to that in a second.
No.
As one guitarist to another,
yeah.
If you had unlimited amount of money in a perfect world, what would be the guitar that you would buy?
That's it. You have an unlimited amount of money, and all you think about is buying a guitar. I would change the world first, man. I would like, I would like put all the dictators and stuff on the spaceship and send them to Mars.
So let me rephrase it then. If you had all the money in the world to just buy a guitar, no one would let you do anything else. You just had to buy a guitar. What would you buy?
Man, it would have to be tailor-made. It would not be one that is out there that really would do it all for me. So it would be both a strat for funk and kind of the bite and the attitude of the strat, and
Sure.
I started with a Les Paul, which is definitely an entirely different animal, and I love the Les Paul for the warm fuzz tones that you can get, really round, that sound like closer to a flute in a way. You get way more sustain, so I really like that. But then the strat, the funk stuff, blues and rock, there's something about the strat that I really like. And the one that I have is actually fairly close. So yeah.
Let's see it. Let's see it.
So that's a Brian Moore.
Ooh.
So it has a nice little look, but it's kind of neck-wise, it's closer to a strat, but it has the rosewood, so it's a little warmer. So you still can play jazz and you can funk with that. And you can rock out, because pickup-wise, it has the humbuckers, but it also has one here that is a single coil, and you can split it to get you the Fender sound. So it has the 5-position switch.
Oh, gotcha.
But it has the MIDI input, so it's also going MIDI synth. And I have my volume control here for my MIDI. I can change patches here on one of those. So it's very versatile. The neck plays really well. It's a really low action, and so to tell you that I need another one, maybe, but I'm kind of happy here with what I have.
I would love an beautiful guitar.
Yeah, it's a great guitar, but I would love an old hollow body jazz thing, or something, maybe a Gibson or an Ibanez, or something else maybe. But frankly, I'm fairly happy with what I have here.
Perfect. That's a great answer. Yeah,
that's right.
I was kind of expecting you to say that. Actually,
yeah, man, spend the money on the poor, or on like I said, prosecuting all the criminals out there, and that would be better spent than on a guitar.
Sure. Oh, for sure. Exactly.
But of course, I'm saying that because I took care of myself equipment-wise. And maybe if I was younger, I would say, hey, I would love to have that one.
Yeah, for sure. I'm constantly like that right now, believe me. And I will grow out of it one day, for sure. But
may that day come, in a long time.
For sure.
Yeah.
Exactly. One day I'll get there, but for now I got to work hard. All right. So to end off the interview, as Sarah and I told you before, we do have a little game that we play. It's a really simple game. It's not hard at all. Have you ever heard of the game This or That, or more so referred as Coke or Pepsi?
No, but it's going to be a first for me, man.
So it's basically a game of Coke or Pepsi, where I'm literally just going to give you a list of things to choose from.
Okay.
But with that said, I'm only giving you 1 minute. So I'm going to pull up a timer.
Hang on, because I'm not ready. I've got to increase the level here so I hear you well.
Perfect.
Because it's timing. So what are you saying about 1 minute? What am I supposed to do in 1 minute?
So I think if I count correctly, I have 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 12. So I have 12 questions where you have to pick between two things, and you have to answer all 12 of them in 1 minute.
Oh, okay. It's a Freudian. It's like a Freudian thing where I'm gonna disclose a lot of my inner demons by picking some words instead of others.
Oh, for sure. And a lot of people, when they hear this, they're always like, "Oh, okay, I'm just picking between two things." But some are a little harder than others, as some people have found out. I think this is going to be our, I believe, 17th or 18th podcast episode that we've done, and I believe we've only had 5 people be able to answer all questions.
Boy.
So yes, I am very interested to see how you do. A lot of them are very music related, so that might be harder, it might be easier, but we're going to find out. Are you ready?
Because I'm French, you should give me an extra 20 seconds because my comprehension of English is so.
All right. Well, I think some of these might be very familiar, all right?
Okay, let's go.
All right. You ready?
Yes, I am.
All right, here we go. Starting the timer now. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Movie or TV show?
TV shows these days.
Jimi Hendrix or Eddie Van Halen?
Hendrix.
Gibson or Fender?
Fender.
Scoring film or scoring video games?
Film.
John Williams or Hans Zimmer?
John Williams.
America or France?
Oh, you got me there. That's it. I lost. France.
All right. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Action movies or comedies?
Comedies.
Live recording or multi-tracking?
Live.
Home studio or professional studio?
Professional.
Live musicians or virtual instruments?
Live musicians.
That right there, you have 6 seconds left and you have answered all the questions.
And you got me stuck too, because the French America stuff, that's not fair. It's like, but being an old salmon, I think I'm going upstream. Eventually France is still my home place, even though I've been here half of my life. But
for sure.
Okay, that was not so hard, man. I was afraid you would ask me about like a funny story and stuff. So that was good.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah. We actually had a guest on, funny enough, I actually play in a band with him, and we were interviewing him about, band stuff without saying that, oh, we're in a band together, just because we were like, a little extra promotion, why not? And there were 4 members in the band, so it was me and him. I was doing the interview, and then there's other 2 members, Bobby and Damien, and we were like, all right, we have a game for you. You ready? And he was like, all right, let's go. And the very first question, we were like, Bobby or Damien, choose who you like better. And he literally just stopped and he's like, you can't do that.
No, that's not fair. That's not fair. You're a sneaky guy, man.
Hey, I got to throw a couple of oddballs in there.
You tried to sink me there. I can see you tried to sink me so that I wouldn't finish on time.
For sure. We always got to have 1 or 2 questions like that. Well, Professor Caumette, thank you so much for being on. You've been a wonderful guest to interview. It's been a pleasure. So thank you so much.
My pleasure to be with you, my friend. And I'll see you in class, and your homework better be done.
you know it will be.
It's always on time.
And as always, I would like to thank Sarah for being my co-host. Unfortunately, she's not here with us right now, but without her, this show wouldn't be a thing. She really is the backbone to everything we do. So, Sarah, thank you for everything you do. And as always, if you'd like to stay up to date with anything advising related or anything involving CPCA, you can go ahead and follow us on our social media accounts. That would be at CPCA_advising. That's right. Find us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat. I don't know. We're everywhere. YouTube. That's where you're watching this right now. So as always, have a lovely day. Have a good weekend and enjoy yourselves.